Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Giant Zone, where we get together every week and we talk about the Giants while allowing any of our followers to join us live on the show, get involved in the discussion, ask any questions, and give us their thoughts and opinions as well. We got a special show for you this week with the draft. Oh, by the way, I forgot, guys, the introductions. I apologize. So you got our host, you got Steve the Banker, you've got GM George, and you've got yours truly, Carl the Closer. Special show this week, guys, with the draft coming up and a lot of questions about who the Giants should take and who may be available there at 5 or 7. We invited somebody that covers Alabama football, writes about it, interviews, covers them. He's been doing it for a long time. He's really good at it. So he's been gracious enough to join us on the show this week. So I want to introduce Rick from Tide New World. Did I get that right, Rick?
Absolutely, that's me.
Beautiful.
That's so. So I'm Rick Morton from Tide New World.
So there you go. So Rick, number one, we appreciate you joining the show and giving us some time here, especially with everything going on right now. It's been a busy offseason for the Giants. But before we get into this, Rick, why don't you give us a little background about yourself? Tell us how you got involved covering Alabama football, how long you've been doing it, anything you want to share with us.
Yeah. So in like the rest of my life, I actually served on the executive team of an orphan care ministry that does global work caring for orphans. Doing a lot of stuff in Ukraine this week and kind of dealing with dealing with the war. So this is a nice distraction, and that's kind of what Alabama football is to me. I grew up in a house where my dad graduated from the University of Alabama in 1948. Huge Alabama fan, and so I didn't have a chance really to be anything else. I kind of grew up hearing the stories and rooting for the Tide, and it's just always kind of been a part of our lives. And about 8 years ago, we moved here to Birmingham and in the local area. And so what I was able to do at a distance, I've been able to do up close. And honestly, just I love this. This is the fun thing that I get to do in my life, is to spend time around Alabama football. And so I'm a writer. I've written a couple of books on orphan care and have done some stuff that's been published nationally and whatever. And so it just kind of naturally sort of, became a thing. I just started writing kind of for myself, put some stuff out on Facebook, and, kind of had people and built a following. Eventually kind of separated off Tide World Order from my personal Twitter account and personal Facebook account, and then eventually created a website, started writing, and now write with footballsapient.com and serve as a college football writer there, and definitely specialize on the top.
So we appreciate that, Rick. And I think we missed a little bit of that at the beginning. You had a little audio static there. We couldn't get out too much. So I don't know if you want to just kind of go over what you originally said, how you started to get into it.
Absolutely.
Summarize that.
Yeah. So I grew up in a family where Alabama football was kind of part of our lives. My dad graduated from Alabama in 1948, so I kind of didn't stand a chance. If you put your feet under the table and ate in my house, you were a Tide fan. So I've just always loved it, and it's kind of been a part of our lives. Once about 7 or 8 years ago, when we moved to the Birmingham area, we just got to be around Tide football a whole lot more and got to be kind of in the community here, and so that provided the opportunity to have a little more insight, kind of a little more of a maybe an insider engagement or whatever. And then I've written books in the orphan care world, have been published in papers and on websites around the country for that, and so just as a writer, I just kind of put what some of the stuff I can do together with a thing that I love, and I just do this for fun. So it's just kind of the side gig that's just a blast. I'm sure you guys are the same way. So we just want to have some fun with it.
Yeah, that's what that's the podcast for us. It's a labor of love. It's a fun hobby for us. Did you? Maybe I missed it. Did you go to the University of Alabama, Rick?
I actually didn't, and it's a funny story. So I went to the University of Memphis because I got more scholarship money there,
Mhm.
And so, my dad was dead set that I was going to go to the University of Alabama until he started looking at the money and said, maybe you can just love the Tide and go to the University of Memphis. And then I did my master's, my PhD in New Orleans at the Baptist Seminary down there, and
Yeah.
so but have always kind of been around, and born in Alabama, raised part of my life here, and so it's always been a part of our existence. I've actually had an opportunity to teach a little bit at the university, so I kind of reach out and claim it and go,
Awesome.
that's kind of the way that I claim it.
I think I would have fallen out of my chair if you had told me you went to Auburn.
Dude, can't you tell already? I don't speak that slowly and I don't use small words. And so you guys should know that I don't have anything to do
I
with
love
it.
I had to get the shot.
love it.
Sorry about that, buddy.
I love it.
So, so Rick, let's dive into this a little bit. Why don't you give us a little, kind of give us a state of the current affairs of Alabama football. What are your expectations for the 2022 season, and maybe even just shed a little light on beyond that as well?
Yeah, I think we're set up to have a fantastic season in 2022. Really and truly, this was supposed to be a rebuilding year for us anyway, and so the idea that we made it to the national championship game and really had a chance to contend, and if it had not been for some injuries down the stretch and some stuff that really kind of ended up piling up on us toward the end. I think something that we've seen throughout the off season is that Coach Saban kind of has this deal down with the transfer portal and understanding that. And I think it's funny, a lot of the press when he came out and made the statements that he made about being warning people about the transfer portal and talking about how that and NIL together were going to change college football. There was a lot of saber rattling especially in the SEC community, saying, oh man, Saban's lost it. He's the dynasty's over. This is the end. He doesn't know how to compete in this environment. And he went out and picked the three number one players. So he got the number one wide receiver, the number one running back, and the number one defensive back in this year's transfer portal class. And so really really took care of some strategic needs that we have, and expect with those holes filled with the freshman class that we have coming in, and then the experience that we gained. I mean, my goodness, man, we've got Will Anderson coming back. So to have a sophomore that performed the way he did was just incredible, and with him as an anchor on the defense, bringing as much back as we are on defense. I think the big question mark for us going forward, quite honestly, is going to be how we're set at the receiver position. It's really cool, kind of even as we're getting into talking about the draft a little bit, the fact that we heard this week that one of the things John Mechie said when he was being interviewed as part of the draft coverage is that he kind of threw some props to Ja'Cory Brooks on Alabama's current roster and said, look, Ja'Cory Brooks is poised to be the next guy, and really sort of set the tone for the fact that it's next man up again. And it's funny, even as we were preparing to sit down and talk with you guys, this is not a great draft class for us. If you look back over the last 4 or 5 years in particular, and the last two, and really kind of put it under the microscope, this is really sort of overall kind of an underwhelming class. I think we're going to have some solid pros in here. You're going to have 2 or 3 guys that have potential to be first round, second round sort of talent, but honest to goodness, I think we're we just like the draft class this time reflects where we were in the year this year, and the fact that we were thin at a lot of positions and have a lot of guys that were very inexperienced. And so we're gonna be able to play off of that experience next year, and I think it's going to be great. As far as 23, I mean, it's hard to see that far in the future. Yeah. I obviously don't expect that that Bryce Young will be there. We don't expect that Will Anderson will be there. There's going to be a load of juniors that are going to come out this year, and I think 23 is going to look very different for us than the team that we're going to field this year. It may be a little more like the team this year, as far as kind of being a young team and a team in transition. But we feel good about where we are with the quarterback position. Skill positions are loaded, and so as far as we can see into 23 right now, I think signs look favorable that the Tide's not going anywhere. Maybe when Coach Saban gets ready to retire in like 35 or so, we'll I can always hope, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
So, so given that segue, I know we've all got some questions here. So, George, why don't you go ahead and ask a question first here to get this going?
Yeah, first I want to make a couple of comments. First off, I've got to give kudos to Nick Saban. A lot of coaches have somewhat given up, whether through retirement or anything like that, because of this transfer portal, which has been really hurting a lot of the bigger colleges. But somehow Nick Saban has just been able to just continue the strong players that he's brought in. It's been pretty amazing, and I think that kind of goes to a little bit of my question as well. Nick Saban, I need to know. First question is, and these are both going to be on receivers. First question is, how is it? Is it the offensive concept? Is it the offensive coordinator? Is it Nick Saban himself, and he just sells the college well? What keeps bringing in these great receivers? It just seems like every year, the crop of receivers, and, we're Giants fans, so we're not in the college spectrum that much, especially not until towards the end of the year. But we always hear about that one or two
right
Alabama wide receivers that are coming out in the draft. And to be honest with you, if Jamison Williams and John Mechie are the weakest of Alabama wide receivers to come out, that's saying a lot because they are good. So how is it that Nick Saban is just able to just recycle really wide receivers at Alabama?
So that's a great question. And I think, as I kind of look at sort of the whole history of Saban at Alabama, I think you can go all the way back to his first recruiting class. Mm-hmm. And I think Julio Jones is really the key to the whole thing. I ran a Twitter question and a Twitter poll this week among Alabama fans, and just kind of threw out there, like, what's the Mount Rushmore? One day we talked about the Mount Rushmore of Alabama. Julio Jones was all over that. And the reasoning was not only because of what he meant as a player, but it was because of what he meant to the program, being really kind of the first 5-star recruit that signed with Saban and took the risk. And I think one of the things, and and I don't want to oversell this, like I'm hanging out, at the Saban's house on, on the weekends or whatever, but I have had an opportunity to spend a little bit of time and to be, to be with him a couple of times in some settings, and man, just incredibly impressed by him. And I think the deal is football is I don't know what he would do without football. He's miserable without it. I mean, we kind of saw that in the COVID situation, the joke. I mean, literally he was, like watching the game with the all 22 view in his study upstairs, and Miss Terry's watching it downstairs in the living room, and and both of them agreed that was probably one of the most miserable times in their marriage, just because he wanted to be he wanted to be there with with his guys. And so he's an incredible football coach, but he keys on developing young men, and really the process is about so much more than football. And I think what translates is, as a guy of his age doesn't matter. It's about the connection. It's about the personal investment. It's about what guys see in him. The other thing is he like, there's no bull. And so when he goes in, he's going to tell a recruit, and this is, I mean, I've heard Julio Jones say this, that one of the things that impressed him about Coach Saban is that he walked in and told him, he said, like, if you work and you earn it and you're good enough, you're going to start. But if you're not, you're not. And so he kind of laid the gauntlet down in front of him and said, like, if you're as good as you think you are, and if you're as good as everybody else thinks you are, then you're going to have a great career here at Alabama. And so really, you can kind of trace that decision. And even when we were running more of a 3 yards and, in a cloud of dust kind of offense, there was this sense that he began to attract good athletes. We kind of got the pipeline out of Miami there for a while, where there was it was almost like an every 2-year thing that we were seeing a receiver come out of the Miami area.
Yeah.
And then really, honestly, Lane Kiffin changed the whole game. And we, and it was a love-hate relationship. I mean, there were a whole bunch of us that screamed at the television and, screamed at him in the stadium a lot because quite honestly, we wanted him to run the ball more than he did in some settings. And it was, it was kind of hard to make the shift that we have to the, more open pro style offense that we're running now. But truly what happened is, we went from being a school where one receiver could succeed to a school where 2 and 3 receivers can succeed. And there's enough to go around, and there's much more balance in the offense. And now it's the momentum. Guys are wanting to come here and they're stepping up to the challenge because they've now seen this as, I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but to your listeners, like, we're kind of becoming wide receiver you.
Yeah.
And that's never been our identity, right? Like, that's never been who we are. But I think success breeds success, and we're kind of in that place now where it's really not recruiting as much as it's reloading, where you've got guys that are getting in line to try to be here because they see the opportunity that's in front of them at the next level.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's funny. Just one more thing. It's funny because you never hear when it comes to the draft, you never hear about that Alabama quarterback.
Right.
You'll hear about the wide receivers, the running backs, maybe a tight end or two, but you never hear about this Alabama quarterback's going to be prospect number 1. He's going number 1 in the draft. I mean, he takes like average to a little bit above average quarterbacks, and he just makes stars out of them. It's amazing what he does. So kudos to Nick Saban.
Well, and I think George, I'll just kind of throw in one thing there with you. I think that's also a little bit Belichick-like, that he plays to the skill set of the guys that he has, that are playing the quarterback position. And so you don't have necessarily the guys with the best arm or the greatest accuracy. I mean, we're seeing that with Jalen Hurts at the next level. Like, he's struggling to be the accurate quarterback he needs to be in the NFL. You've kind of seen that with Mac Jones, that he doesn't have necessarily the cannon that a lot of the guys that went before him in the draft had. But what they do is they just do an incredible job of being able to scheme to maximize the skills of the guys that they have. And then at the end of the day, when you've got that much talent at receiver, there are days where honestly I'm watching film and I'm going, gosh, I think I could throw to these guys. So it's not really, but
It's funny you mentioned the Belichick connection, because is it any real surprise that Mac Jones landed in New England?
Not at all. Not at all. Like, I think that, honest to goodness, like when that all started shaping up and we kind of started to see the clouds swirl in that direction, it was like, man, this has been a put up job for a while.
Yeah.
And I actually read something today from another guy that covers Alabama sports, that there's a little buzz going around here locally, talking about whether the Patriots could actually kind of pull a trifecta, and if they could get all 3 Bama receivers in the first, the second, and the 6th. And so, like, there's a conceivable scenario where they might be able to stack up at least 2 of those guys. And so think about, if there's a Jameson Williams or a John Mechie that Mac really has some chemistry with, and then you put a guy like Slade Bolden in, toward the end. And I mean, if there's ever been a guy that was built to be a Belichick guy, that's him. And so, it really kind of got me juiced up a little bit to read that article and say, first of all, I was a little upset thinking that I didn't think of it first, but, but like, gosh, man, that like, what a story that would be, right? If we kind of just exported Alabama north.
Hey, Rich, this is a Giants show, not a Patriots show. You can save that for the Patriots.
Hey, bro, you asked the question. I just, like, you opened the door and I just walked right through it. So,
Steve, what do you got?
So look, Rick, you're talking to Giants. You're talking to Giant fans. You're talking to Giant fans.
By the way, my wife, I hate to say this to you guys, my wife is a huge Cowboys fan. And so that may end the interview right here. But like she's not real happy about me doing the show tonight. So I'll just tell you, like I may be on the couch after hanging out with you guys. This is a huge sacrifice.
Oh man, I love it.
There's a real short list of words we're not allowed to say. So
I knew I should have read that prep sheet better.
It's okay. It's okay. It's been 30 some years since they won a Super Bowl, so we'll get in there.
But who's counting?
Yeah, but who's counting?
You guys are 3 of you right there. I see you.
Yeah, my wife says my memory sucks, so I can't even remember. I just know it's been a long time. So being Giant fans, the elephant in the room, and that's meant to be a pun, is offensive line. Because
right,
as one of our great general managers used to say in the 70s, 80s, 90s, George Young, dancing elephants. And everybody, listen, it's no secret. The entire NFL knows that the Giants offensive line, we got one starter for next year penciled in, that's it. Right. So the elephant in the room, as I say, the metaphor is offensive line. And I'm sure every time you talk on a podcast or to anybody, their first question out of their mouth isn't even next year. It's, what do you think of Evan Neal?
Who?
Right.
I guess, let me put some context to my question. Mm-hmm. It seems every year there's an offensive lineman as well, a tackle in particular, that the NFL gets excited about. 2 years ago, it was Jedrick Willis. He was part of the big four.
Yeah.
By all accounts, all the draft research I've done, there's not a single tackle in this class that compares to that group. And quite frankly, nobody in this draft compares to the 2 guys last year, Slater. And anyway, so the question I'm asking you, though, is Neal seems to be, if not number one, in the conversation of either the number 1 tackle or one of the top 2. It's kind of like a flavor of ice cream thing. Yep. Everyone keeps saying. So there was pictures of him going around today, 337 pounds, which is svelte.
Yep.
The big thing about him, everyone says, is even if he's 355, he just carries it different. And not only does he carry it different, his athleticism. George and I were talking about this last week. A lot of fans are like, well, I don't want a guy who can't play right tackle. With him, he played right tackle and was unbelievable. He played guard. And then his final year moved to the left tackle. My question for you is, dear God, I wish he would fall to us at 5, but I think Jacksonville would be insane for not drafting him. What can you tell us about him? Why is he not better than Jedrick Wills, for that matter, when people think about it? What can you tell us about him?
I think it's really kind of hard to put your finger, I think, on exactly what's going on there. I've watched him and paid attention to him and keyed on him. And I think, first of all, athletically, he's a freak. Like if you, and I don't know if you guys have watched the film, this will make you want him even more. If you go and spend a little time on YouTube, looking at some of the workout videos that are out there, I mean, him doing those box jumps. I mean, it's superhuman almost what he's doing. And that's him carrying, like 360. Yeah. And so now in a stronger 335, I mean, he really promises physically to be a game changer for whoever he goes to. I think conventional wisdom is right now he's probably going to go to the Texans at 3. I don't think Jacksonville's going to take him, and that's kind of the buzz that we're at least hearing and kind of what's floating around here.
Wow.
And you guys know, like, all that can change. And I mean, we're one Kevon Thibodeau comment away, an interview away from him slipping from number 1 to whatever, and Evan moving up. But I think some of it is, I think, like, Evan really, he's got to refine his technique. There's still a rawness to his play. And some of that probably is, as you alluded to, the fact that he played in 3 different positions on the line in 3 different seasons. And just not every guy can really do that and it translates as well. I mean, Barrett Jones is the guy that we all kind of look at around here as, and not nearly physically as physically gifted, but he just kind of translated to whatever position he was in on the offensive line. And there was just kind of this inherent, being able to plug into the position. I think with there are times where Evan, he's over aggressive.
Yeah,
Like
he lunges, right?
Yeah, he gets out ahead of himself,
Yeah.
and there's like sometimes it's the bend even is, and so he gets himself extended and he gets out there, and so he ends up on the ground a lot, just frankly. And for a guy that big, he doesn't need to be off of his feet. and so I think, but you put him in the right system, in the right place with the right offensive line coach, and he's got all the tools to to be able to be a Hall of Fame player. Whether he puts in the work and develops the technique, I think he's certainly shown he's putting in the work in the weight room. He's putting in the work, from a diet perspective, and he's putting in the cardio work in order to position himself to be ready. He's just a good kid too. I mean, I think that's the part that you don't want to lose in all this, is that when you're going to take a risk like a top 5 pick, and you're gonna go all in on somebody, you want to make sure that you have a good character pick, and that you can really trust the kid that you're bringing in. And I think the thing that you can say about Evan is you can certainly you certainly can trust him. And even with all these things, I mean, I'm nitpicking, right? Like, I mean, we're at a very granular level to get down to try to find things that are wrong at this point. But I mean, you look at even, preseason, Todd McShay was picking him maybe top 10, maybe he would come in around 9 or so. He's definitely solidly a top 5 pick, because just honestly, like if something crazy happens between now and then, you guys are not going to pass on him at 5. Like, this is like,
Wow.
if by some miracle he makes it
No,
to
sir.
5, he's coming to New York, and so I think what.
I'll pick him up and drive him personally.
Well, and the thing is, like, I think you'll be pleased if that happens. I mean, I think that's one of those draft day things where everybody's cheering and it's a big party, and and you can kind of walk away and go, man, like this turned out incredibly well for us.
Yeah, we got our stud right tackle, which is what I've been begging for. Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt.
Some of the things that you just mentioned and the lower weight, do you see him possibly dropping the 5?
I don't know. I mean, I think it just, a lot of it depends on what you're looking at the coach in the front office, and kind of what they have in their mind about what the, kind of the prototypical, left tackle is going to be. I think honestly, if he's a more solid 336, 340, like in that ballpark, than 360, like it's gonna be good. I mean, he's 6'7", he's got, I mean, he has the size, he has the range, he has everything that you want in a left tackle. His feet are good, and if they can just get him to deal with not lunging at the line, not bending at the line, help him to set over his feet a little bit more, and just improve his technique, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I don't think it matters if he's at 360 or 340, honestly.
One last question on Neal, since we're talking about him, Rick. Do you see him as a left tackle or right tackle in the NFL?
I mean, honestly, he can play either, and it may have more to do with what the team that drafts him have around him. Right. And so, if they've got somebody who fits more into that prototypical left tackle, kind of mold, then he can go over and play on the right side, and he's going to be fine over there. I think at 6'7", and with the size he has and with the athleticism he has, I think he'll be fine in the NFL as a left tackle. And I don't think we're setting anybody up for disappointment by him being in that position.
I just have a quick question on the receivers, both Jameson Williams and Mechie. What are you hearing about their injuries and their recovery from their injuries?
Actually, I just saw today, there was a video that was out today on Jameson Williams, and it was his rehab. It came out through his doctors at Anderson Sports Medicine, I believe. and he was pushing a sled in the rehab room, and so he looks good. He, like he was definitely. I think he's ahead of schedule. I read something today. I really haven't seen anything on Mechie, and I didn't catch any interview that he had today, and so I'm flying a little bit blind with that. But what the word on the street has been, he's going to be fine for June, and so he'll be in rookie camp, and will be in, like, I mean, you never know. There may be a little bit of a kind of a latent thing that he has to deal with a little bit through the beginning of workouts. But honestly, I don't think with either of them you're looking at something that's going to be a long-term issue.
Can I ask a follow-up question to your question, Carl?
Sure.
So, Rick, by all the counts of everything that I've read and seen, this year's draft class for wide receivers is incredibly deep. Nobody in the draft class compares to the top 3 last year. So we're in all likelihood not going to see a top 10 pick used on wide receivers, but it's an unbelievably deep wide receiver class. And before he got hurt, the common everything I've seen and I saw with my own eyes watching them, Jameson was far and away the number 1 of that group.
Right.
So then, would he have been picked 15 or 12? Who cares, right? I mean, he would have. So what we know of him, there's been so much. But Mechie, I saw him in the playoffs. What can you tell us about him? Because obviously Jameson kind of outshone him.
Yeah. I think, first of all, again, high character guy. He's a kid that you want on your team. I mean, I think, I think back to the hit in last year's SEC championship game. I mean, he's a gamer wherever he is. And so I think, from that perspective, he's not the guy that's going to take the top off the defense.
Right.
He very much, although he was able to fill all 3 positions at Alabama, and he was, like wherever they put him, he was able to make it work. I think, he's going to be a Z receiver in the NFL. He's a slot guy. I think that's most likely his position of comfort. The guy does incredibly well at, I mean, his route running is just stellar. His hands are great. Like he's got all the tools, but he's not going to be that big explosive threat. He's not going to take, as I said, he's not going to take the top off of the defense. And so, like, my estimation at this point is, I think you're looking at probably somewhere like early to mid second round. Honestly, I don't think he's going to go in the first. And as a matter of fact, because, and the point that there was talk during the season last year, even in 2020, of looking at him and going, man, he may actually sneak up into the first round and be. I mean, no way, but I do think he's probably solid second round at this point. And for a team that needs a receiver that they can count on, a guy who's going to have great hands, who's going to, he's going to get open because he runs great routes, and he's got the athleticism to be able to go up against NFL secondaries, and he's not giving too much away there. I think he's going to be fine in that. And again, if you're a team, and I know you guys don't want to talk about New England, but if you're a team like that where you're trying to make up for some potential, some potential holes in your quarterback's game. He's the kind of guy who can really make a quarterback look good. He can make the out of shape catches. He can kind of do the stuff to redeem the balls that are just not exactly what they're supposed to be. And honestly, that's what made him a huge success at Alabama. But I mean, obviously, if Jameson Williams, I mean, my gosh, y'all, like, how in the world did we get him? I sat all last year looking at him and going, like, somebody needs to take Brian Day out and have his head examined. There could not have been 3 guys at Ohio State that were better. And he just he is, and I like seeing it live. He is electrifying, and it's one of those deals where about a step and a half off the line. Like you're not waiting to, like he's the guy that his first or second step is so good. He's got so much burst, and he's got a little wiggle, and so he's able to get free. And so, like it was almost the kind of thing when he would line up against press coverage. It was like, okay, it's a dare. So let's see how that's going to work out for you. And there were a whole lot of times last season where it went for 6. And so somebody toward the end of the first round is gonna get a kid that's a gamer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
George, what do you got?
Well, I'm going to switch to the defensive side of the ball and ask about 2 players, actually,
Okay.
Because one is intriguing to me and the other one is ranked somewhat highly. I want to talk about Christian Harris, your linebacker.
Yep.
I watched him on YouTube. I was, checking him out, and I was intrigued by him. But then when I read on him, and I don't know how they define it, but
Right.
They say he's raw. And I didn't really see raw when I watched him. And then I'll ask about my next player. Go ahead and answer on Harris.
Yeah. So I think the thing on Harris is he's incredibly physically gifted. Like maybe a little bit too physically gifted in points. And so I think there are times where he had a tendency to he was a little out of position. He was a little out of shape. He wasn't exactly where he needed to be. And again, I think it's another one of he's another one of those players where it's a little bit of a coaching issue to see can you build the technique with him. I think also he just, I don't know if he has the instinctiveness to really be a difference maker.
Okay.
And I think when you compare him to some of the guys that we've had along the way, like like a Rolando McClain or a CJ Mosley or somebody like that you almost, in watching them, you almost think like these guys have a premonition of what's about to happen.
Right.
They were a half a step ahead. They were running downhill to the ball. And I think if you go back and you really look at film on Christian, there's like a half a click that he's reading before he reacts in a way that just sets him apart, like just that much.
Right.
And I just like, I'm not convinced you can coach that. I think that's one of those things that's just kind of an instinct thing. I think he's probably at the next level. He's probably gonna make a really good will linebacker. And I think really that puts him into a place where he can really take advantage of his movement skill. Like he can really use his body and to its fullest there, but he also doesn't necessarily get exposed for not having that kind of heightened intuitiveness.
Right, because basically you're asking him to do one thing on that play, either cover a tight end or go after the quarterback or just cover for the run. That makes sense. My next person is going to be Fedarian. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Fedarian Mathis.
Phil-Darian Mathis. We should just call him Phil. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to call him Phil. Well, talk to me, Phil. Defensive tackles in the NFL, where do you see him suited best? 3-4 style? I don't know, weight wise, 3-4, 4-3. Where do you see him fitting better?
Yeah, he's kind of a tough. He's a little bit of a mystery.
Okay.
I really think and what makes me say that is he's big to be a defensive end, especially in the modern game. And so physically he really kind of sets up to be more of a defensive tackle, nose guard kind of guy. I think 4-3 in a defensive tackle sort of look is probably a little bit better for him. This guy is he's 6'3", he's 313. I don't want him to hear what I'm about to say. But he's a little spongy. I'm a lot spongy, right? Like he's a little like physically, he kind of needs to go through the same, kind of the same course that Evan Neal has gone through in the off season. And so I think he could probably drop down to around 300 pounds or so and really kind of firm up and would be in a much better position, physically. And that might even actually kind of, give him some snaps out on the end as a defensive end. He really, I think, he doesn't have the explosiveness. He's not the guy that's just going to burst off the ball.
He won't be a Tomlinson, what you're saying.
No, not at all. And has, he really kind of struggles a little bit with that, he's not a power rusher. He's the guy, he was the guy that was perfectly suited to run the mush rush and like just to make sure that we kept contained and that, we kept our shape on the defensive line. He's going to be a serviceable defensive tackle and probably can range out on the end at times for somebody. And he'll make a lot of money and he'll be in the league for several years and do really well. But he's not the guy that we've sent to the league. I mean, there's not a Jonathan Allen or something like that waiting to come out.
Steve,
in my opinion. But Phil, if you're listening to this, I really like you, buddy. So don't take it out on me if we see each other.
So tell your friends about us, Phil, too. Good, Steve. Sorry.
So look, Rick, I don't know how much longer we have you tonight. So this has been a blast so far. We're having fun. It's a thin draft class as Alabama draft classes go. We've said that. 6 first-round picks in 2021, 5 in 2020. We get it. So if it's okay with everybody else, I'm going to pivot to the future. I'm sure you're still, at the end of the day, Alabama college football comes first for you.
Right.
So you're more than happy. The guys know, we joked about it last week. My favorite position on offense is tight end because you got to run, you got to block, you got to catch. You got to do a little bit of everything and it's cerebral, but it's physical. And at the Giants, we have this long tradition of great tight ends, Jeremy Shockey, Mark Bavaro. But one of my favorites who goes unsung is, in my opinion, as good of a blocking tight end as we've seen since I was born, and that's Howard Cross, 1989. Going back a ways for everybody listening, out of Alabama.
That's right.
So the reason I bring that up is the Giants have one tight end, this kid Merrick, we just re-signed.
Mm-hmm.
We literally have probably no tight ends going into the season. We got to have to find some in free agency. God knows we got to draft some. It's a deep tight end class. So hopefully we get at least one, if not two. Okay, great. You guys have had some great tight ends, Irv Smith, OJ. What do you guys got going on for next year? Do you have anybody that we should be excited about that hopefully we get a young tight end this year?
So Cameron Latu is the guy, like he's our guy. And he's the guy that you really need to pay attention to. I mean, he's a converted defensive lineman. Okay. He's been in a physical transition really for the last 2 years. But last year, he physically, like he really got it together as far as, I mean, just body type. Like you saw him come out of the tunnel the first time and you went, okay, that kid looks like a tight end. He doesn't look like a defensive tackle that they've tried to convert. But I think the thing that I expect to see this year out of him is that he's now going to grow into really understanding the position. He's got it all. He's a good blocker. He's gonna do well. I mean, we had a converted offensive lineman, Kendall Randolph, who did he was in there for run sets most often for us. And I think what you're going to see this year is that Latu is not going to have to come out and he's not going to have to be off the field on obvious running downs, because I think he's going to step up and his blocking is going to be better. He's a heck of a pass catcher already. has really good route running ability for somebody who hasn't been running routes very long. And he's got a little bit of an intuitive sense of how to find space. And so he's just got that, almost like that basketball player kind of mentality that you love to see in a tight end, where he's able to go into space, he's able to put his back to the defense, give a big target, and give the quarterback something to go to.
So, but Rick, let me interrupt. Is he special in the way? Do you think he's going to grow into the OJ?
No, I think that's this recruiting class. I mean, we've got and man, I'm like didn't do my homework the way I should have probably, but we've got a 5-star tight end coming in that I think holds that kind of promise in the future. But for a place where we've had guys like Howard Cross and Ozzie Newsome and Irv Smith, and like you go all up and down through the years, that's been a position that's always been solid here. It's not going to be that special for us this year, I don't think. Okay. And part of that too is with losing Jaleel Billingsley in the transfer portal. Billingsley was one of those guys. He was one of those tweeners that had, kind of the height, had the range to play tight end, probably had a body that he was just like a big wide receiver. But like, he was always the guy that you kind of looked at and you said, man, like he could break out at any moment. But for some reason, he stayed in Saban's doghouse most of last year and really didn't start to see, meaningful playing time until the last third of the season and never really seemed to quite get his head in the game. And for us, I think over the last couple of years, he's been the kid that we were kind of looking at and saying, man, that could be the next special one. And he's gone. So we'll just live to fight another day.
Rick, I'm going to stay on that theme of looking ahead. So a lot of talk here with the Giants is Daniel Jones the guy? Mm-hmm. Do we roll with him this year? And then if he flops, do we look to draft a quarterback next year? So given all the attention that's on the quarterback position here in New York, give us a little snapshot about Bryce Young and what you see for him. Here's a question I've always had. Yeah. I mean, with all the receivers there, the kid is good. I'm not going to say he's not, but was he a product of the weapons around him as well? Or is he really that good? And what are your expectations for him?
He's pretty physically gifted. Like I'm not in the camp of the fact that he was a product of what he had. Yes, he had an embarrassment of riches around him, and every quarterback that's played for Alabama in the last 6 or 7 years could say that at least. Right. Maybe even further. I think the thing that I'm really impressed with about him is the mental side of the game. He's a gifted kid. And he has been since he was in middle school. And so like he's drawn attention, but the thing that nobody's really talking about, and I would encourage you guys, if you're interested and you want to dig a little deeper and kind of figure him out a little bit, he's got a podcast out there where he's coming out every week and he's talking. And so where you've not had insight into Alabama quarterbacks in the past because they were kind of hiding behind the wall, NIL's kind of brought him out into the sunlight. And I'm going to tell you, so there's an article that's waiting to happen. This one's kind of been sitting in the hopper. And so I'm going to ask all of your viewers, listeners, and you guys to just kind of keep this on the down low, because I really want to make sure that, when this one springs forth, that nobody, honestly, I just don't want anybody to write it before I do. There's something about, his dad not only was a college athlete, but he also is a psychologist. And there's something about the mental side of the game and the way he manages himself from being grounded, understanding and kind of being very self-aware, that's just crazy good about him. And so, and it's different than Tua. I think Tua had that to some degree. Yeah. But Tua also there was a little bit of a cocky edge to that as well. Not bad, but I think the deal, they tell the story, and he's told the story on several interviews after we beat Georgia and the 2nd and 26 play. He and Saban had a moment in the locker room, and Saban kind of said, well, like, what the heck were you thinking? And he said, well, I just thought we needed a little more room to operate. And he's kind of like, and coach just kind of shut that down right quickly. Like, no, like that's, and so I think there was a little bit more of that gunslinger kind of mindset with him, that he's still a kid that just, like, he's having a lot of fun at it. I think Bryce is having fun, but I think he's very cerebral and very centered and very together. And there's just something special about how he approaches the mental side of the game. And he intuitively understands, as a very young man, how to lead men. And I don't even know how to explain that to you, except to say that as a redshirt freshman, he walked into that huddle as a guy who's not physically imposing, and he's not coming in and like imposing his aura on anybody, but he had them eating out of the palm of his hand from the very beginning. And it's just this quiet confidence. So I'm going to tell you, if Daniel Jones doesn't work out, pray that you guys are in position to be able to bring this kid in, because I think he's going to be special, and I think he's going to be special for a long time. And I'm a homer, right? Like, Alabama is, like, I love it. I'm not writing about Alabama, and I'm not covering Alabama because I ended up here and it's my job. I'm doing it because I love the team, and it's meaningful. But as a fan, when I look at our chances next year, I like them a lot. And part of the reason I like them a lot is Bryce Young and what I think he brings to the table.
Wow.
Can I ask a follow-up question on your question, Carl? So I apologize, George, but staying on Bryce.
It's all right. Yeah, yeah.
That's just one thing. Our hearts were broken a bit, a lot of Giants fans, because Justin Herbert stayed an extra year. Is there any risk, as far as Alabama fans are concerned, that it could be a beautiful thing for an Alabama fan,
right?
But is there a risk, do you think, that he stays? He already won the Heisman.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a risk that he stays more? I haven't heard that. I'm not. Live through this.
Yeah, my gut says no. Like, and part of that is just because I think there's a natural evolution that I think we see around here, where, like, you'll see guys that kind of make a decision against better judgment every once in a while. But essentially, when a guy's making the move as an underclassman, it's usually everybody knows. And it's a sense that he's just he's there, he's ready. It's naturally time for him to go. And I think Saban really coach kind of works with these kids in a way that he sort of blesses them and sends them when it's really time for them to go. And so there are some players that we probably, like, we've sent up to the league that if they hung in here for another year, they probably could have made themselves some money. And that's certainly true. Bryce is not going to be that kid. He may be the kid that, quite honestly, is the best quarterback in the draft, but nobody can believe it because of the fact that he's not going to have the measurables. And so his hands are not going to be that big, and he's going to be, 6 foot flat. And there's certain physical attributes that, those things just aren't changing. And I think we see it every year where a guy's out there and half the league ends up talking themselves out of him because he doesn't look the part. So, and that, but that is going to probably turn out to be good for somebody.
I just want to, I do have another question, but I'm going to split this question up because you just mentioned something. And I just want to ask you, because you are in Alabama, and I think that a lot of people get confused about a lot of these kids that come out, whether it's earlier or they stay another year. The way you said it, I feel like what you were saying is Nick Saban is more of an influence in these boys' lives, because you always hear about he came out because he had voices in his ears. All his friends, his family were telling him, go to the pros, go to the pros. But I feel like from what you're saying is these kids that come out from Alabama, they turn to their coach more than they turn to before they turn to the others around them. Would you say that's true? Or for some, yes, some.
I don't know if that's true, but I think what is true is that they trust that he's not gonna lie to them. There's a heightened sense of trust that when he tells them something that like you can take it to the bank and he really believes it. And I think what you see a lot of times in college football is that kids make decisions and they don't completely trust their coaches because they feel like their coaches are playing both ends against the middle. And so there's this sense in which the kid's kind of holding back, but the coach is kind of holding back and everybody's being manipulative in the relationship.
Right.
I think what my understanding of the process and the way this works is they'll get a draft grade, and coach is talking to people in the league and is helping them to assess their value, but he's made a promise to them that he's continuing to keep, which is like you do the things that you need to do to grow as a player and grow as a person, and you're going to create value for yourself. You'll hear him say that 1,000 times in interviews about players creating value for themselves. And so he's not the coach that's sitting there going like, he's not going to be the coach that's going to be looking at Bryce Young saying, I'm in trouble if Bryce Young goes to the league. He's the guy who's going to say, hey, I trust that we're developing someone else and that we're doing the same thing and working the process. So if it's the right thing and Bryce Young has created all the value that he can for himself at Alabama, then it's time for it's the right time for him to go. And we're going to do that for someone else, and it's going to be okay for us too.
Fantastic. And I get my final question is going to kind of come all the way back to the beginning. At Alabama, with the New York Giants, we're not going to be able to fix our O-line this year. So talk to us a little bit about who we should be watching on that Alabama O-line this season. Who's taking Evan Neal's place? Who do you think maybe is not a big prospect now, but can build themselves to be that from what you've seen?
Man, gosh, I wish we were talking after spring ball. I just, because I don't have a sense. I mean, the offensive line was still like a work in progress for us, even as we got to the end of last year. And personally, I don't have a sense that there is anybody that I see right now that I'm going, there's like a can't miss guy. Yes. I think that guy for us was Evan Neal, and I think we built around him last year, but there was a lot of shuffling that went on during the year, and we've got some new talent coming in. We've got some freshmen that are ready to step up. You've got like the Brockermeyer brothers and some other talent that's there, but I think like what we haven't seen is anybody who was sort of playing at such a high level that you can identify them and go like, this is the guy we're going to build around this year. And so let's talk in about 4 weeks. What is it?
I'm going to reach out to you. I'll reach out to you.
April the 16th is the A-Day game. And so we're going to try in our house, we're going to try to go for the double, by the way. So we're going to try to do A-Day in Tuscaloosa and then hot foot it back to Birmingham to be here for the inaugural USFL game here in our hometown. So, I like, it's probably going to be crummy football, but at least it'll be history, right?
It's football.
Absolutely.
Hey, Carl, before you end this, I got a super fun question for Rick.
Go ahead.
You guys ready? Bench, you started off the show tonight talk about Julio.
Yep.
This is fun for us. I don't know how fun this is for you. This is going to be a tough question. You ready?
Yep.
I waited all show to ask because I put you in a tough spot. Who are the top 5 wide receivers? You talk Julio. We got Amari. You Cat. Give me your top 5, baby.
See, like I had guys yelling at me on Twitter
There it is.
all this week because of this. Like, because I put this Mount Rushmore question out and said,
That's
like,
right.
who's the Mount Rushmore? And like,
And you don't have to give them an order. You don't have to give them an order. Just give us.
Well, thanks. That is awfully benevolent of you that I don't have to order them.
See, this isn't a Cowboys podcast. This is a Giants podcast. We're nice. I'm just saying, we're nice.
You could put them in order, but it doesn't mean anything.
You don't want to come to a Giant game. You don't want to go to,
So, I mean, I think, and it's not it's not even physically in performance. Some of it's leadership and whatever. I mean, I think, because like, I want to go back into the way back as well. And like, look at some of these guys that are, I mean, I could go back to the 1930s and say, Don Hudson, who was Bear Bryant was the other end because of Don Hudson. And when they went back and did like retroactive Heismans, Don Hudson was picked to be the Heisman his senior year.
So how about of the Nick? I'll make it easier for you because
Nick Saban years. Okay. All right.
So I'm sorry. I should have said Nick Saban.
Okay, good. Because like I'm like going way back in the, because I'm getting, by the way, just put a plug in here for anybody that may want to check it out. I'm going to launch a YouTube channel soon. And the first thing we're going to do on the YouTube channel is we're going to be going all the way back into the 30s and kind of coming forward with Alabama greats and kind of doing some shorts on a lot of folks that have been a part of the Crimson Tide over the years.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, you heard it here first. The announcement was made here. So, so I think, obviously, I think Julio, and it's not just because of like who he was as an athlete. It was also because of the fact that he really broke the ice and made that possible. I got to go with Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is like, for me, is probably the quintessential Alabama receiver. He's like quiet strength, great leader, definitely like was the glue that held that team together to a great degree. I think, this is so hard.
I got a name I'm waiting for.
I got 2.
Okay.
I'm waiting for Calvin Ridley.
So here's the thing. I love Calvin Ridley, and I think like he was the guy. He was Houdini so many times for us, and just pulled the bacon out of the fire when we should have lost games. And so there was like, definitely, I want to see him in a better position as a pro. And I kind of, I know, like, treat me right. Okay. When I say I'm a Saints fan, and so spent a lot of years around New Orleans. And so I'm used to disappointment. It's kind of a part of me. I'd love to see Calvin Ridley, with the Saints, because I think that'd be a great fit. Again, another one of those guys that's great ball player, great high character guy. I think Jameson Williams, I think even what he did in this 1 year, like you can't necessarily look at his contribution to Alabama football, but if you look at it strictly on the merits of who he was on the field and what he did, I think we're going to look back at him, and we're probably going to look back after an NFL career and kind of go, man, this guy, like he was an important player for us in the moment that he was here. And you can't, like, Devontae Smith has to be in there.
There you go.
I mean, my goodness, the dude won a Heisman. He's I don't like, Devontae is like the bookends of his career, y'all. Like the first thing he did that anybody remembers was 2nd and 26, and the last thing he did walking out the door was catching a touchdown on a fly pattern. And so like there's this kind of, he is absolutely, we can't do better than that.
So that's 5. So you leaving out Waddle?
Yes.
And Jerry.
Wow. Whoa.
And
And what
I am.
about Jerry Judy, Rick?
I'm not gonna like one of
Oh,
my, if one
that's
of my
right.
sons. If one of my sons knew that I'd left Jerry Judy out of it, like
I forgot.
I'd probably sleep in the garage tonight. He's got a number 4 jersey in his closet in there, and the whole reason he has a number 4 jersey is because he's a Jerry Judy guy. I think that's the part, that's the thing. And guys, this is what when I put this thing up on my Twitter account, Tide World Order, this week, like that's the thing that people got frustrated at me about, because they're like, there's no way we can narrow it down to 4 greats and put, like have a Mount Rushmore kind of moment. We can't talk about one great player, because there's so much, and there's so much that's just happened in the Saban years. I think that in and of itself encapsulates what we've lived through in Alabama football.
Can I just ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
I know you got to run, but I just want to ask real quick. Devontae Smith coming out. Everybody talked about his weight. I mean, what did Alabama people say while everybody on TV is saying he's too skinny, he's gonna
keep talking. Just keep talking. I mean, really? It was because at the end of the day, I mean, I think what we saw out of him was strength and toughness, and his weight was never an issue. Okay. And so he played physical and played much above his weight. And he wasn't the guy that, like, when he got hit, you were afraid like he was going to break in half. Okay. And so I think people looked at him physically and they made a judgment about him. But if you watch him play, he just like he's able to play at the weight that he's at.
He's amazing.
But I do think, I've had this conversation with my son. So I've got boys that are 19 and 20. And they have no idea. They have no idea the era that they're living in, because they've grown up in a world where their assumption is that every couple of years we're going to go to the national championship, and every 3 or 4 we're going to win it. And it's and I lived through years and years and years where we didn't sniff that, and didn't think we were ever going to be close to it again. And everybody was living, back in the Bear Bryant days, and
we're living that now.
Well, and so here's the encouragement to you. Like, I think all it takes is, like, you get the right coach, you get the right setup around, like you bring in the right set of stability, and you bring in a few guys you can build around. And I know it's a little bit different in the NFL, but the truth is, like, that forward bite and that forward momentum, I mean, look at what's happening in Cleveland right now. If there's anybody that shouldn't, if there's anybody that's had a history that they shouldn't be able to do this, it's Cleveland. Yet they're kind of getting the ship turned around. Yeah. And so, maybe we're talking a few weeks from now, and Evan Neal is a giant or something like that, and like, you guys come out of this draft with a little bit of wind in your sails, and an opportunity to really turn this thing around and make a run at a championship. So
that'd be fun.
Rick, if we get Evan Neal, we may have to have you back on the show just to talk
I'm
about
there.
Absolutely.
I'm there. I may have to come to New York.
There you go. Well, none of us are physically in New York, so we can kind of give you landmarks.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, like, I see New York behind you. How are you guys doing?
It's always in our hearts. Always in our hearts.
So, Rick, we know you have to go. We really appreciate the time tonight. Why don't you just kind of let viewers know how they could follow you, what you'd like them to see, and how they can follow you and reach out to you, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Best place to follow me and connect with me is on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is Tide World Order. So Tide World Order. Then my personal website is tideworldorder.com. And so everything I write, at least a breadcrumb of it goes there. Right now, I'm writing with Football Sapient, so NFLsapient.com. It's kind of weird, but like Homo sapien, so it's NFLsapient.com, and my you know, a lot of what I write there is not the traditional football stuff. And so it's like what's happening in the business around college football, what's happening in the program, how's Alabama going to be able to, you know, sustain this run. Some of the things you guys are talking about as far as like, what does the future look like a couple of years down the road, those sorts of things. And so that it's a mix of that. And then also, like I said, taking a dive back into the history of Alabama football. I think there are a lot of folks that have just come to Alabama through the Saban years, and they have a you know, kind of a point of reference of these 6 championships, but they really don't have a connection to the other 12. And so we, you know, really want to kind of do some education and say, look, there's a lot to kind of look back on and celebrate and go watch and all that sort of stuff from, you know, from days past. And if you're going to root for the Tide, you might as well know that too.
And before we let you go, if you have any pull with Bryce Young and he'd like to do a podcast together, we're wide open to that, my friend.
Man, you are talking to somebody who has no pull, like none whatsoever. But if the occasion comes up, I'll tell him you guys are great guys and he should go on with you.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
And when you launch your YouTube channel, let us know. We'll help you promote it as well.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it very much, guys. This has been a blast. Like so much fun, and look forward to being a consumer and listening to your stuff down the road. And hopefully I didn't screw this up too bad, and you'll have me on again sometime.
Rick, you were awesome.
Rick, you were awesome.
We'd love to have you, Rick, and we'll be talking in the future. You have my word on that.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, guys. Have a great evening.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much,
Good
guys.
night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.